But my first question is, were you always into farming?
No, basically how I got into the Western cowboy type life is my parents. Well, when I was born, my dad still competed in rodeo, and he rode bulls and he rode bucking horses. But and then prior to me being born, my mom, she competed in barrel racing and other girls events. Um, my uncle, he rode bulls. My my dad, my mom's stepfather, he used to compete in rodeo. So just had a background of rodeo more or less. We didn't have
Okay.
a large like ranching type community where I lived.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of like well, there's plenty of people with horses, some people with some backyard animals or whatever, but it wasn't like a big ranching community. So how I got into it was basically through rodeo.
Oh, okay. Like, were you actually into, what did you do with the rodeo then?
So how I started was, I wanted to be like my father, so I wanted to ride bulls.
Okay.
And so I didn't have that opportunity until I was in high school. And um, early on, I actually got hurt. And so transitioned from riding bulls to roping. And I don't know how familiar you're with rodeo, but there's an event called steer wrestling,
Yes.
calf roping, team roping, and then went to college, competed in these events, and got into riding broncs, bucking horses
Oh, wow.
while I was there. So after
What was that like? Like, being a part of that, like the bucking the horses, like being on, like, what did they do? I don't know. Like, how did that whole?
well, it's about like it's really an adrenaline rush is what it is. You have this, very large animal with full of muscle, that's ready to buck you off, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's really a lot of adrenaline, but also in the Western world, in the cowboy world, the bronc riding is kind of like the artsy type of event because it just has that nostalgia in the Western world. It's just kind of like um, it's more of the original, one of the original, because you had a saddle. What they tried to do is they tried to, take the buck out of horses,
Right.
and so it became a competition between cowboys and so that's how that started, and that's probably where it really, if I was to guess, where rodeo really started. So it's kind of like the artsy, the nostalgic event. So I never was really great at riding broncs. I didn't have enough time, I guess, and invested in. So I did go on to compete professionally in mainly steer wrestling.
Okay.
And in spite of my size, I'm a small guy compared to most. I'm more of the size of a bronc rider or a bull rider or whatever, but I did have a lot more opportunity to get a lot more practice with a lot of skilled steer wrestlers. So that's where I was at in the pro world was in steer wrestling. So
Okay. Now, was I mistaken? Because I do this a lot. I hear things and then I make it so, and it isn't so. So, were you ever into farming? Were you a farmer?
So in college, and when you speak of farming, I'm not sure if you mean in like crop or animals.
Animals.
Animals. Okay, so growing up, we had, the occasional backyard pigs or whatever. But so when I went to college, that's basically where I started that
Okay.
lifestyle as far as into the animal agriculture
Right.
world. So I went in as an animal science,
Okay.
and I was also already rodeoing, competing in rodeos. So I had that. I in let's see here. I moved into the beef unit where they had raised the cattle for the university.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah,
Wow, I didn't know that.
it's for agriculture majors, so you can get hands-on experience or whatnot. And
Hmm.
then they had a poultry ranch there. They had a hog ranch where I actually worked on before. After the beef unit, I went on to the hog and sheep unit, and then later on, I went into the horse unit. Um, and then I also, at that time, also worked on the actual farm where producing crops. So experience in raising hay and other produce crops and whatnot. So in college is also where I worked in on campus. We had a research company that were raising hogs for the purpose of extracting their pancreas for
Oh,
research.
yeah. Yeah.
And so I worked for those companies. There's one to begin with, and then another one came in, and so I worked for both of them.
What did
Um,
you do? Like, what exactly did you do when you say you worked for them?
so where I started was on the kill floor.
Oh,
So
okay.
I actually had um, lot of experience on the kill floor. So,
Yeah.
but I also worked in other aspects. I was in the transportation, in the feeding. They were enclosed in specialized units, so they had no outside
Mhm.
influence, no outside. They didn't want any. Everything when they went into the units had to be sterile, so you had to go in sterile, and then to make sure that they didn't contract something that would affect the research results or whatever. So,
Right.
um, and then I also worked on the floor where actually excising the pancreas and preparing it for shipment to the labs and whatnot. So
Wow.
I basically worked all of that. But being a you know kind of my personality, I guess I was primarily on the kill floor. So
Yeah. And how did that, like, I mean, at that stage, you were probably, you hadn't even been thinking about veganism or any other kind of lifestyle at that point in your life, right?
it's interesting. I never knew, in all honesty, and this is the total honest truth, is that I didn't know what. I never even heard of a vegan actually at that point, but I did hear of vegetarians.
Yeah.
And one of my buddies who I was one of my better friends on campus. We were roommates a few times, and he kind of befriended some organic. Um, they were just basically what I would term at the time is just hippies, and I thought they were weird. I thought they were, I thought they were. I'm totally honest here. This is just
Yeah, yeah.
where I was at. I was like, man, these guys stink. They're like patchouli. I didn't know what patchouli was. But I was like, man, these guys stink.
Yeah,
Travis. I was like, man, where'd you pick these guys up from? He's, oh no, they're cool. They're cool. I said, man, they're weird, man.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
But I didn't have any. He at previous to that, he'd experienced. He'd gone into school in Central California where there was a lot more culture. I was down, and you know, I wasn't I wasn't cultured like that. I was
Farm
raised in
country,
a
yeah.
rural area, even though it wasn't large plots of land where there's you know, lots of ranching or anything. I was rural. I didn't have the culture. So when I went to school, that's where I met my first vegetarians, and I just thought they were weird, and I really didn't want anything to do with them. So
Great.
um,
So you didn't really have any conversations or anything like that with any vegans or vegetarians. So being on the right, so being on the kill floor for you was just like another step in your life, basically, because you kind of transitioned. It was like it's in your family. It's like a whole. It just seemed like a natural course for you to just to be there, right?
Yeah, it was totally natural. It was a way to help pay my way through college. I had, 3, 4 jobs at any one time. So, the feeding of these animals where I live, like the beef unit, only required so much time from me in the morning. But even before that was the time to go and do this other process with these pigs. So if I was transporting them, I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm going and transporting them to the slaughterhouse.
Mm-hmm.
If I was on that shift as well that day, then I would park the tractor, get out and prepare for killing hogs on the floor. Then I would go back to my other beef unit job and do my chores there, feed and whatnot, and then be ready for school. And so, I mean, I could have had done 3 different jobs prior to going to class, and so it was just the way I needed to, provide for myself. Right? I didn't have a lot of scholarships. I didn't have academic scholarships. I had to work if I wanted to stay in school. So my parents didn't have money to support me through school. I had a little bit of grant money, but wasn't enough.
That's just a little bit, yeah. Wow, okay. So I'm thinking, like, when I'm trying to imagine that you're there and you're just another course of, it's just another action in your life, right? It's just another course, and that disconnect that happens when you're killing an animal. Like, did you just like blank out at that moment? Like, how does that happen?
Well, I grew up hunting as well, so
okay.
My dad, I don't even know when I started hunting. It was early. It was before I could really remember. And it was typically like bird hunting or whatever. But then when I was about, I don't know, 3 to 5, my dad got into hound hunting where he had a pack of hounds and he hunted bear, raccoon, got into mountain lion. So I was very, basically very aware of killing animals at an early age. I mean, at 5 years old, probably 12 and midnight, no moon out, and my dad was up on the mountain with the dog underneath the tree with the bear in it, and at 5 years old, I came up to the tree, so most adults wouldn't want to do that, and I was pretty determined as a young child because that was something I grew up with, and following my dad's steps is what I was very, very natural for me to do. So I was determined to get up there. So I mean, at a very, very early age, I was exposed to hunting, and there's a lot of blood spilled that I witnessed, growing up. So doing that at that level in a slaughterhouse was not really anything that it wasn't anything unnatural for me. It was something that I just basically progressed into.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense now. Now I can understand that. When did you graduate from university then? And then how did you transition? Like, how did you go into farming? Like,
so basically, I never graduated. Being in the college bag there, as you can imagine, there's quite a bit of partying and whatnot going on. So I had taken one respite one time because I had just too much partying. My GPA went down like really, really fast in one quarter, which even caused me to switch majors because I was a pre-vet prior. I was pre-vet, and I was Going back after my little time off, it didn't get any better. I didn't stay away from the party. So basically decided that I should probably just move on. And so at that point, I went and worked on a ranch in Wyoming. Up in Wyoming, there was a weekly rodeo, actually not weekly, nightly rodeo during the summertime in Cody, Wyoming. And so, although I wasn't able to be there every night, like I preferred, me and my buddy were able to go and compete, maybe 2 nights a week or something. So that was something that kind of brought us more into the rodeo world, that would sustain us, pay us, and help pay our entry fees and just kind of have that lifestyle continue. So, and then once I was done working there, I continued into the rodeo world. I just traveled professionally,
Okay.
and then that progressed to getting more into, having my own. I didn't, as a rodeo cowboy, I didn't have much money. I didn't have, basically whatever I had on my duffel bag is what I owned, and I just, um, so I didn't have a place to really lay down and call my own. I wasn't living at my dad's. I wasn't living at, I just kind of like everywhere, I was single. So I just did that kind of lifestyle for a while, for a few years.
And then when did that end?
That ended probably, let's see, probably early 20s, probably 22, 23, 20. No, it was probably 24 or something. Basically, that kind of ended by, I started to have some conscious awareness of my lifestyle.
Okay.
Did
something happen?
Well, the ranch we worked on was a Christian-run ranch. The owners were Christian, and so they would actually have a service every week at their ranch. They'd have a pastor coming from town and had a service there once a week. So that was my really first exposure to anything that I didn't grow up with that. So I maybe went to a church a few times as a little child to sing songs or whatever, but I didn't have any experience to anything in a Christian lifestyle. So so I had a little bit of exposure there when I quit the ranch and went back to rodeo. I kind of settled in kind of back into my hometown a little bit. And one of my cousins asked me if I wanted to play softball. Well, I grew up playing baseball, so I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. So he says, okay, well, you need to come to church. I was like, oh, that's cool. I've been going to church, every Sunday for a while, So,
right.
So I decided I'd go to church the season so I can play on the softball team, because it was a church team. So
right, okay.
So I was like, okay, that's cool, And then while there, I just began to search, a little bit more who I was and what and not on the level of, animals or anything, but just, my lifestyle as far as partying and girls and whatever. So I decided I need to start searching. And so at that point is when I was still involved in rodeo a little bit, but then it was just getting to where I wasn't, strong enough to really hold to some new convictions that I had. So I decided to put it on the back burner and not travel, at the time until whenever. If it was going to happen, it was going to be a little bit later. So that way I had some strength in my convictions, and I wouldn't fall to the temptations that I was under. So, that's basically how that ended. I probably competed a little bit more after that, but it wasn't on a consistent basis. It wasn't something that I was involved in all the time. And
Okay.
actually, that's actually where I met at about the same time I met my wife. And so then I immediately started having a family. And so at that point, I was like, okay, I'm definitely not gonna,
Yeah.
waste my money on rodeos and that lifestyle whenever I have children to take care of. So,
Right. Priorities, right? Yeah.
correct.
Okay. So when did you transition into veganism or vegetarian? Like, how did that even start for you?
Well, it was a long process. It was a long journey of kind of an awakening.
Uh-huh.
Um, I read a book that challenged me,
Which
and it
book?
was um, Kevin Trudeau, Natural Cures They Don't Want You to Know About.
Okay.
So that got me on kind of like more awake to the system of just kind of wants to keep us under a thumb, keep us sick, keep us, you know, uh, unknowing, I guess. And
Uh-huh.
so it kind of opened my eyes to a lot of things that I wasn't aware of before. And that kind of turned into my son got sick as an infant due to some vaccines. He was having vaccine injuries.
Oh no.
So we began to do some really hard research on that.
Hmm.
And we decided to abstain from any more vaccines for him.
Okay.
Um, and that also transitioned into nebulizer for steroids for asthma that had started, and just some stuff that was very painful for me to do. So we really did just some hard searching for these things, and decided we're going to stop the vaccine for him. And that transitioned to food stuff. So we began to um, abstain from a lot of processed foods that would potentially continue
Uh-huh.
harming him and even us as adults. So
What did you take
so that
out
kind
first? Like, what did you cut out first?
of primarily like hot dogs and
Okay.
uh,
You just mean like you just cut out all the processed stuff at first? Is that what it was?
well, no, it was very gradual as we learned. We were fairly young, and we were just trying to, we were at a farmer's market, and we had a gal there who was handing out some pamphlets and stuff about um, basically the poison of hot dogs and some of those types of
Okay.
processed meats, But it was pretty much just hot dogs at the time, and then I read a book, and Jordan, oh, what's his name? Garden of Life.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know. I don't know the last name, but I know the book. Yes.
So, anyways, in the book, it was called The Maker's Diet. So I read that, and talking about he had Crohn's disease, so he went to grass-fed meats, and he cut out pork and shellfish, and the
Mm-hmm.
more toxic meats. And so we did that. We were very committed to that. And that's how I began to get into business with my father, uh, feed store business, where we provided hay and feed for livestock, for horses, for poultry. And so at that point is when I began to have the means to sustain my own animals. Went on the organic uh, produce, organic meat, organic eggs, grass-fed meat, grass-fed. Everything was more on the natural line, and so that's where we went at that point. And so we had our own beef for those purposes. We had our own poultry for those purposes, lamb, whatever animal products we wanted, we obtained that way, other than dairy. Dairy, we're buying, organic milk or organic raw milk,
Mhm. So you had, so you had those animals, is what you're saying? Like, did you have a farm and
Yeah,
then you
I
had those
started,
animals? Okay,
I started my own, herd,
right.
and maintained that up until, I became vegan or had the transition into that. So, we had our own poultry, we had our own,
Mhm.
everything in our own, backyard. Did that for a while. We had, 3 retail feed stores, so we were very engrossed in the agriculture,
Mhm.
animal agriculture. Helping the backyard farmers, helping the even the smaller ranchers in the areas or whatnot, and maintaining help support for them. So we did that for about 10 years, and this is a very good turning point for us. Is that we had purchased some land, off-grid land in northern Arizona, and so it was like 74 acres.
Nice.
So it was our dream to be there, but we really didn't know. We really didn't see when that would happen, because having 3 feed stores that were just totally engrossed and married to, I'm uh, married to all 3 of these businesses. 3 jobs in one basically. So, but I was partners with my dad, so we were able to sustain a little easier with the workload. But um, so happened we were able to sell 3 stores in a year's time without advertising them.
Oh, nice. So that took you out
Well, for the moment.
for the moment.
So we were able to move and begin our life in northern Arizona on our little homestead we started building there.
Oh, okay.
But see, my dad was a year behind us. He had planned to do the same. So
Mm.
we bought another store site and opened up we had started a new store. There was the town we moved to didn't have any feed store, so we thought that was our best bet to make a living while we were here.
Right.
And so it took off really, really well. We did good there. And then after a couple of years, I just was really feeling that I needed to sell. And at the time, I didn't know why.
Okay.
I was just tired. I was, you know, kind of just done. Um, so my dad bought me out,
Oh,
and that was it's gonna be 4 years in September, so 3.5 years, I guess.
okay.
Um, and that right there is basically, I still had my cattle, I still had poultry, I still had my own animals. But at the time, I stopped. I was so busy. I stopped like butchering them for myself, and that we were collecting eggs. Um, but being out there on that property, it really, really brought me closer um, to our creator. Really,
Yeah.
closer to. I had a lot of time after selling the store to really spend walking and just being in nature and just listening and having nature impact me.
That's awesome.
And my spiritual beliefs have transitioned so much in the last 3.5 years. I mean, went from a traditional Christian home into just a more open-minded spiritual experience. And I attribute that to being out there on that property, because I don't think I would have ever had that. I mean, I can't say I don't think I'd ever have it, but I don't see it happening,
Right.
and I don't see it happen in the same amount of time and the same impact. That was our really turning point.
Okay.
It wasn't long after that where I began to realize that I had some sickness that I had been working through, pushing through, that I didn't, when you're working so much, you don't pay attention to yourself. You don't can't listen to your body. You can't, hear anything. You're just pushing,
Mm-hmm.
So I began to really realize that I had some things happening. A lot of it was physical. A lot of it was cognitive. My memory was very, very poor. My children would talk to me about something very important to them or whatever, or a small conversation. It doesn't matter. And I mean, even the same day, sometimes next day, a week later, or whatever, I couldn't remember what our conversation was, and I didn't notice that while I was working. I don't know what was the difference. My body was just very, very achy all the time, no recovery. I figured stopping work, that hard labor and that stress on my body of the mental stress, physical stress would alleviate a lot of my symptoms that I had, but they didn't go away. So I began to hear that I need to stop eating meat. It wasn't nothing audible. It wasn't nothing. It just was in my spirit that I just heard this, and I'm like, I'm going crazy. This is ridiculous. Like my only experience prior to anything like that was in college. Whenever when my buddy was friends with these vegetarians, and I was just like, I didn't listen. I was like, that's weird. So probably a couple months of that, and it's just increasingly, in my mind, and just was like, I think I probably start listening, and I've tried to have a habit of that, even as a Christian, to listen and to be my own guide, rather than letting a man or a woman or someone at the pulpit or anybody like that to try to guide me. I always had that practice, and so I began to say, okay, this is real, And so I said, okay, I told my wife, I said, Lori Lynn, listen, I don't know what's going on, but I'm hearing that I need to stop eating meat. And I expected the worst. I really did. I expected to, to flip out on me, but she was very supportive. She's like, okay, all right, that's
Just
what you
like
need to do. Yeah, I mean, it was like immediate. It was like no hesitation whatsoever. And I was like, wow, that was weird,
I wonder if she was feeling the same things then.
She didn't, but something in our marriage, we tend to be progressive at the same time. We tend to be ready for one another's, little bit of changes that's going,
That's beautiful.
So I think during that time of being out there, she was being prepared for that as well, even though she wasn't hearing that, And she's had struggles in her life with diet, and she's had a lot of issues where she had to do a lot of green diets, and because of candida overgrowth and stuff like that. So she was very keen, and still is, to needing to change lifestyles to accommodate one's health issues, to better them health issues. So I think she was maybe knew that my body and my mind and everything was at a point where I needed to do something drastic. And so she was very accepting of that. But I just said, hey, listen, keep this between me and you. Don't tell the kids, And, and there's probably a lot of, pride, like, because of who I was, and a Western guy, cowboy, and, all of that. And there's probably a lot to do with that, ego in the way.
Absolutely.
So, but, it wasn't but a few days later, and she came home and she goes, hey, I talked to the children. I'm like, what? It's like, well, hold on. I said, wait, come on, you said you weren't, and she's like, just hold on, they're cool, they're fine, they actually want to do it with you. And I was like,
Oh,
what? So, it just like really, and she had said that she was going to do it with me too, but so it really, really like grabbed me. And I was like, wow,
that is so
this,
wonderful.
this is
Wow.
where we're supposed to go right now. And at the time, I didn't really have the consciousness of animals. I didn't really have that empathy for animals yet. I didn't have that. I did have some compassion for them because as I was raising them, they became really my friends. They absorbed. I would go out there and I'd spend time with them, and they would absorb my stress. I can
I
go
was
out
going to
there,
ask you about that.
and,
Yeah, like,
and then when I come back in, I just felt like all of that was released, and so I did have that connection with them in that sense because um, I loved, I truly did love and care for them in a compassionate way up until the need to,
I know.
to slaughter
So,
them. So
so just repeat that for me again. So you would go out there, uh, and be with the animals. And what would that do for you? Like these are your friends. So you're having a bad day or you're feeling down. You would go out there and you would be with the animals and they would kind of lift you up. They would make you feel better. Is that what would happen?
yeah, so basically, I'm the type of guy that I don't stress a lot, even in these high stress, you know,
Yeah,
having to
I
repeat
get
retail
that.
stores and all these stores and all this stuff. Even though I had all of that, I wasn't a high stress person, but I also didn't have a lot of ways to release it either. So I did at times bottle stuff up, but I would make it a practice. It was daily that I would go out to my animals, even from the very beginning. I'd go out there and I would try to befriend them. I would try to pet them. I would try to, rub their ears and their belly, or, the chickens. I would try to catch them and just stroke their head and their waddles and just make them feel peaceful and like I'm not a big threat to them, And
Great.
at the time, I was beginning to understand energy
Okay.
and that it would impact their life to the point where it could cause the meat to become tainted.
Yes, I heard that. Yes.
A stressful environment is going to cause the animal to have that inside of them, and then therefore it's consumed by us, and therefore we ingest all of that. So that wasn't my main focus
Mm.
in doing that, but I began to be conscious and aware of those things at that time, and so um, I really became to be, but I also knew that they absorbed my stress. I'd go out there and I tell my wife, I said, man, they just, especially like the chickens,
Oh,
for
yeah.
some reason, chickens really did. And even though they want to run away from me or whatever, but they really did absorb that. And she began to realize that herself. She's like, yeah, you're right. And I go out there, I just sit there and they just, all your stress is just released. And so, I felt like that was like a very comfortable, very happy, time in my day at the end of the day when I'd come home and I'd allow that to take place. So yeah, that's basically how I saw things at that point.
So, do you have any memories of like one specific animal or an instance like where you like really bonded with an animal and then you had to say goodbye to that animal?
You know, yeah, a lot actually.
Yeah.
So, um, for instance, uh, when my cows would have calves, I would do my best to be present at as early as I could to rub the calf down and just kind of get help them to become familiar with me. And something that I really enjoyed doing was just rubbing them, caressing them, even picking them up and just petting them, to where they just would calm down, and without being stressed when I'm around, instead of, that kind of reaction. So there was at one point, after we moved here, we have a lot of native tribes around us. We have the Navajo, Apache, and the Zuni.
Okay.
And so a friend of mine had told me about a friend of his who was a Zuni, and they were going to be having this is probably the most impactful one.
Okay.
Because it was closer to the end of my time with slaughtering animals, and this was actually the last animal that I slaughtered.
Oh, okay.
So they were having their annual big, tribal ceremonies, and I told my friend, I said, "Hey, listen, I have a beef that I will, donate for their festival, whatever, their ceremonies and whatnot." And so they came over, and I took his life right there. And man, it's just that has such a vivid memory. I mean, it's
Whose
like,
life was that?
and that calf was he was one of my gentler ones, and it's
Yeah,
it's tough even now.
I bet. Just thinking about it. And it was the calf, not the cow?
Well, yeah, he was grown, so he
Okay.
was of
About a year
a
or
good
so?
size.
Okay.
He was at least, he was probably a couple years. Being that I grass fed them, they grew slower.
Okay.
They didn't, receive all the stuff that they'll get, to raise them up fast, in a feedlot or whatever, in a conventional way. So it took him. He was probably 2.5 years old or something. So, and he was one that I could walk up to anytime and climb on his back, and
Oh.
I mean, he was just, one of those, the special ones. And yeah.
So have you ever had like nightmares about that one then? Or do you just think about
No,
that?
I'm not a nightmare kind of guy. I don't have them, but I think about him a lot, even up to today. I mean, he's something that I'll remember for. I mean,
Well,
I remember talking, so
what was his name? Did he give him a name?
no, I didn't give him a name.
Oh. I guess you don't
And
do that. I guess that's not a thing that farmers would
right,
do. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And my bull, my sire, I named him, but he's the only one. Actually, I take that back. There was another one that I named, and he was just really short and squatty. So I did name him based on his looks, but no, that was not something that I made a habit of doing, because yeah, you don't name you don't want to be eating, Tommy,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I'd have that disconnect there for sure. Okay, so now you've told your wife and your children you're all vegan, and you have these animals on your farm or your backyard or your acreage. What do
So
you?
how that transition was, if I would have known what we were doing and what it was going to continue to be, I probably would have never sold the animals. Um,
Right.
but at that time, we wanted to travel. We wanted to kind of take some type of ministry on the road.
Okay.
So, and that's where I began to start. I was like, okay, I'm not eating meat anymore. At least for now. I didn't know it was going to be permanent, but at least for now, it took a little bit for me to realize it was permanent.
Okay.
And so I began to sell them off, and And if I would have done it, if I would have known, I probably wouldn't have told them. But I trust that it was hopefully, that they all
Yeah. Well,
did
it's
well. But
exactly. You can't really. It's hard not to
yeah,
look back and feel guilty about things or feel like I shoulda, coulda, woulda. But
right.
it's, this is you are in an awesome place right now with your life, right? I mean, I think that you've come a long way. Like your transition is one I've never heard of. Like usually when someone goes vegan, it's because of an animal or something. I've never actually heard of the spiritual side of it. So like I think that's a beautiful way to go vegan. Like you just hear it. It's a spiritual awakening basically, and that's what people should think of veganism as, right? It is a spiritual awakening. However you view your creator, man, woman, whatever. Exactly. Wow.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's how we got into our first steps into it. And then I was very, I went to before we moved, well, growing up, I mean, we had an iridologist that we went to because we had gone to the natural remedies, naturopathic type
Okay.
of lifestyle. So um, we had traveled over there shortly after I had heard that and decided to do that. And she confirmed it that I needed to stop eating meat and dairy products. And so I was like, okay, this is strong. This is my conviction. This is what I'm not wavering. This is what I'm doing. So, but it was over time that I began to have the empathy and the deeper knowledge and compassion of what an animal's life is, and uh, those experiences that I had raising them and caring for them really began to have a deeper meaning for me at that time, because I did realize the connection that they have to other life forces, other animals, including us. And so that was when I really began to have that consciousness of what I had been doing, and what I wanted to do from that, from now on. I began to realize that what I had done was terribly wrong in my new convictions, and I wasn't gonna be a part of that anymore, and I began to really have just a deeper conviction, just a really, really strong conviction against of harming animals in any way. So, um, and my family, moved along with me in that journey, and that those conscious awakenings, and so we are all pretty much in the same spot where as far as that goes. So,
Because you guys
well,
all traveled together, the spiritual journey. Oh, like, did you have children at this time?
yeah. So they at that time, see, my oldest is now 19. They're 19, 18, and 17, or 19, 18, 17, 16. I'm sorry, he's going to be 19 in a few days. So
Okay.
18. So this 3 years ago, he was probably 15. They were probably like 15, 14, and 13. So they were, and they'd made all these transitions with us as far as, and we've always explained to them. We've never hidden our decisions. We've always tried to give them our best um, knowledge and understanding, convictions of everything we did as we were growing up, in our walk with our health, with our diet. And so we didn't even in our spiritual life and in Christianity, and now with our new spiritual life, we've always been very, very open with them, and more along the lines of discussion rather than trying to tell them.
Good. Yeah.
So they've always transitioned well, and they've always been, you know, very conscious of the decisions we've made. So, and they are now as well. They're very, they have convictions about these things as well. So,
I did have a question here. I always write these notes down, and I always forget to look at them. So I'm going to look at them now. Okay, so I'm really curious. How about your parents? And how are they? Like, how do they view your new lifestyle?
well, that's a good question. My dad doesn't. I don't know if he chooses to ignore it and the walk around, or if he is conscious of it and avoids it.
Okay.
I know that his wife, who is my stepmom, she is very, very aware of it. And she grew up in the same, her dad was a rancher, cowboy, worked in feedlots, worked on ranches, and that was her life. That was her dad was her, idol, and she's lived that lifestyle. My father still competes, still has animals for the purpose of roping, and he still hunts. And I don't I he probably thinks I think he's I mean I've been with him since I was young, I was on his heels forever, and it's probably very, very difficult for him to come to grips and to really, really grab a hold of it.
I could
Of where
only
I am.
imagine. Because
So
you idolized him, right? Like you
yeah,
wanted to be
and
like him.
yeah, and everything I did, and we were always, together. Whether we were hunting, whether we were early on going to rodeos, or in my middle years, from say after he quit rodeo up through high school, he was my baseball coach growing up, and we were always in the woods together in those years. So yeah, I mean, we worked together in construction, worked together in the feed store business. So basically my whole life in rodeo, everything was all together, and now I'm just this total, like, who is this kid, or I'm not a kid, but he's in his mind, he's probably, who is this kid? This ain't my son, And so I try not to make that any more difficult on him,
Okay.
But I know that my stepmom, she's kind of pushed me away in a little sense, She still, I still do things for them. I still go over there and help them out and whatever. And so she still loves me and she still respects me and stuff. But that part of my life, she's tried to push away,
Yeah.
My mom's very supportive. She may not understand. She may not know why. But she's always been the type that whatever we decided to do, she was supportive. And the ones who probably get the most pushback from is my wife's family.
Okay.
They're traditional Christian families, and they Bible college, seminary,
Oh wow.
pastor, and so we try to bring that spiritual awakening a little bit into our conversations with them, and they don't get it. They don't understand it. They think we've lost touch with our creator, and
You're in a cult.
and so in all we've become closer and closer, and and our we that could be further from the truth, so We're very, very spiritual, very passionate about, our spiritual life. And so,
So tell me about your spiritual life then. Tell me what it is that you do now.
so we are very much awakened to frequency and vibration. Our where we vibrate at. I mean, we know that that there's different frequencies of say like pride, ego and stuff like that is a very low vibration. Anger and hatred and all that stuff is low vibration. But as we tune ourselves into higher, vibrating higher, better energies, the love frequency, the love vibration, that's where we want to pursue, basically, or that's what we aspire to do, is have that higher vibration. And so we do that through, meditation, through breathing, through our food, what we consume,
yes.
Whether it be in our ear, whether it be in our mouth, whether it be in our eyes, whether it be our surroundings. But we know that, I've always been a very deep researcher, which is served me well. And so we know that that raw fruits and vegetables have the highest light energy. And when you go and you cook them, you decrease that. And then you have your dairy products, and they're even less so. And then you have your flesh from animals, and once you cook it, it is like almost fully depleted of any light energy, or could be even zero, depending on how much you cook it. But so we're very conscious of that, and trying to get away from cooking, getting away from, and that's all the process, because we are addicts, we're food addicts. And so we try to be just conscious of what we eat. And that's I think that's probably our main focus right now, because we have so many food addictions.
Okay.
And processed foods, processed sugars and all that just really, just gets you to where you are, that's what you want to consume all the time. And so, which is not, in our opinion, through our, research, what we believe is, that's what we need to steer away from, and consume more
So you're on
raw.
the raw food diet. Okay.
Well, we're not on it because we are still addicts. We are not
transitioning.
That's what we aspire to be,
Okay. Okay.
And if it was just me, it would probably be easier. If it was just my wife, it would probably be easier on her. If it was just my son, it probably, collectively, in our weak moments is where we fall,
Yeah.
And as a father and a mother, when we go to purchase, food, we think about, man, we want to make sure that they're eating. We want to make sure that they're, but in all, it's wrong thinking. We're trying to appease their appetite when we should really be suppressing it. But we don't. That's not what we want to do in our hearts. We don't want to try to be enforcers, So, but that's what we aspire to be, and we know is the path that we're probably all eventually be on. But so yeah, that's a lot of our spirituality is in what we consume in our food. But we also are, whether it be, just being in nature. I think that would be the next thing, is being in nature, connected, grounded, and in the sun and the water, and connection with animals is our spirituality. Yoga, meditation, any of those things that we could incorporate into our hectic and busy lifestyle, So, and that's another thing, is that we really feel like we don't have a really strong hold on it, is that busyness of life. And, but, our just connection with everything in this world is spiritual. It can affect us spiritually. So money, is energy. We try to have the correct relationship with money, correct relationship with everything, just a healthy relationship to where nothing has hold on us. We just aspire to have that liberty that.
So do you still have this huge property? Are you still living on this huge property that you spoke of earlier?
No. We sold that about 6 months ago.
Okay.
And I had many thoughts about wanting to start my own animal sanctuary there. But I think that may have to come back around. I'm not sure. So no, we sold that, and we're just kind of we are getting ready to move, preparing to move. We're in an area where we don't feel strong and connected spiritually, and we are actively pursuing that. And so we are actually moving to Sedona, Arizona. So that's a very, very big transition for us in our life right now. So.
Okay. So where do you are there other people that you talk to that have the same philosophy as you, like the same beliefs, like your spiritual groups? Like, are there other people that you can talk to and have the same like-minded conversations with?
Well, good question. That's pretty interesting how this social media can be such a cesspool,
Yes.
or it could be such a brilliant, beautiful thing too.
Yes.
It's all who we connect with and how we perceive it and how we use it. But so in our last 3.5 years, we have had, like I said, this transition in our spiritual life. Very interesting. We had a close friend challenge us on a very, very controversial topic that I'm not going to bring up because it's not pertinent.
Sure, no problem. Okay.
And the other one is women in the church. And we had moved from traditional church setting in the buildings. Many years ago, we began to do home church.
Okay.
And so we were in a home church setting with some people we had met early on when we moved over here to Arizona. And we began to meet with them. And one of the topics that was very, very heavy on some other of our friends at the time, was heavy on their mind and heart, was the role of women and their ability, or whether it was shameful for women to speak, or all these very dogmatic in the
backwards
church.
Thinking, okay.
So we began to really, really search this out.
Okay.
Because we weren't in agreement with them. And so we really began to search that out and come to the conclusion that no, women are just as valuable, and they are just as much a part of anything, whether you want to put them in a box or not. We decide we're not going to do that.
Nice.
And we want women to express themselves. We want women to share what their ideas or perceptions or beliefs, whatever it may be, a song or whatever. So that's kind of where we started challenging our current views. It just kind of gradually moved into the Christian views of Christ being sacrificed, and that we are to partake of his blood and his body and sacrament, and we never use the word sacrament, but I know that's the proper terminology. And we use what was it called? Communion.
Yes.
So that challenged us. We had some really, really rough times in this as a family, even because these were very, very rooted in our life, especially my wife growing up in a pastor's home, and she was pastor's daughter. We really challenged this idea of, and this was part of our walk as well. We began to kind of walk into what they call Hebrew roots, and but it's just basically just learning about the Old Testament side, the Torah side of Christianity, and all of that. And we began to study those things, and in that, in our study of the other controversial topic that I'm not mentioning, we began to befriend some people, and then we began to walk along together, searching some other matters out about the Hebrew side of Christianity or whatnot. So just began to study those things together, and then I began to realize a lot of things that were, I'm kind of fast forward, and I'm going through this a little bit faster because it wasn't a real fast process, but it was within a few years. We began to realize that there was a lot of things in the Old Testament that we don't believe in. One being the sacrifice of animals, there's many, but that was one of the big ones at our time of transitioning into veganism.
Okay.
And we began to realize that though that system was not a system of our true creator, that was a system of a different God that they worship and follow. And that tied in with Christ or Jesus or Messiah, however anybody wants to portray him, however you want to call him, whatever you want to call him, the Hebrew name or whatever. We don't believe that in the blood atonement, the blood sacrifice, and all of that. That was the Hebrew version. That, and I'm not saying all the Hebrews, because I know there's plenty that probably think differently, and I do know of one that we have learned a lot of valuable things from. But in general, what we see in the Old Testament, anyways, is that line of thinking, that doctrine, those beliefs. So that really took us away from. We kind of went full circle. We went into the Hebrew root area, searched all that out, come up with what we hold on to today, and came back out of that into more of the Christ consciousness. The Christ, we don't necessarily believe that there wasn't a Christ, where there's a lot of people that they think there wasn't. But to us, that's not necessarily what truly matters. Is your ability to love your ability to, be a light, to change your world through your frequency, through your vibration. It's my belief that the Messiah was one who had, a vibration of like 1,000, versus where I was as a Christian was probably like a 150. A lot of
Okay.
pride, a lot of ego, a lot of dogmatic thinking, and not a lot of love. It was a fake persona of love. It wasn't true. It was all, if that person did something to me, I'm gonna write them off. I'm not gonna love them anymore. I'm not gonna speak to them. I have these
Right.
negative feelings. Whereas now I've evolved into an area where, and I still struggle with, but being in a consciousness and a vibration of not allowing other people's negative views, talk, whatever, to affect me. And that's why I do struggle with in like vegan activism. Activism is having that self control.
Oh, I know.
Even though I'm not ever angry, even though I'm not ever maybe I'm rude, maybe I'm condescending, maybe I'm so that's one thing I do struggle with, and
Awesome.
I figure out where am I supposed to be on that? Am I supposed to be like that? Can I do things in a different manner? So that's probably my biggest struggle on that. But sometimes I have to step back and breathe and be like, okay, I just need to let this stuff bother me. These people who are total contradictory. That's where I was.
Yeah.
I would have said the same things. I would believe the same things. I would have been just as hateful. I would have been just as whatever. So that's where I've got to control myself and not allow other people to, for one, bring me to a lower vibration of ego or pride or anger or whatever, and continue to love and accept, and not that I have to accept people's behaviors, but just knowing that not everybody is on the same page, and my job is not necessarily to bash them over the head, but to and try to bring some truth and to live in a vibration of love and light, so that way maybe that'll penetrate their heart, so.
Plant a seed for sure. So, with your activism, what all do you do then? Like, I know you do online activism. Most of us do that. But is there other forms that you do? Like, do you do any outreach, or are you with any groups, or is it all
No,
within the faith?
being where we're at, and northern Arizona is pretty rural, and I mean I've aspired to do things, but as far as the more intense, in your face type of activism, but I've not gotten into that, and we'll see if that's somewhere I'm led to do in the future.
Exactly.
If it is, I'm okay with it. If not, then I'm okay with that as well. We'll just have to, make those determinations when they present themselves. But at the time, I'm social media is, I do have a lot of friends and family, and so I'll put some of my perspectives and beliefs out there, and believing that eventually, they will begin to see my side and ponder it and question their perspectives and their beliefs, and you know, it's really fascinating that I've had um, not massive, not a tidal wave, but I've had a lot of people who have changed their perspective and changed their minds about um, where they used to be and have gone and turned vegan. So,
How does
and
that
those,
feel?
you know, it's rewarding, but I know that they were on the same probably path as me at the time, and they were ready for it. You know,
Yeah. Okay.
so I just happened to be the mouthpiece at the time. You know, I don't take credit because I'm just sharing. You know, and you know, just like someone else, you know, could have done that for me if I was in a spot and they said, hey, you know, check this out. You know, this is what I believe and whatever. At that current time where I was hearing that, I probably would have been like, okay, I could see that. You know, I probably would have been accepting. So I don't know. It feels good because I know that I'm not just a clanging cymbal. You know,
Mm.
that I have had people listen, which is the biggest thing is that they will listen.
That's the
But
biggest
as far
the
as
challenge.
the message, as far as me being the one, that's not my message. It's not me being the one. This is our creator's message. This is our this is our message of love and so that's kind
So
of the
how do you
way I.
spread? So how are you spreading this message of love then? I mean, are you doing any more interviews? Because I think that a lot of people need to hear this. This is a fascinating story to me. So tell me more of how you're going to help us spread this message.
I don't know. I think about that all the time, but I don't really know. I do make some social media posts,
Yeah.
and I tend to be, kind of hammering away some things at once sometimes, and then I'm like, okay, I probably need to back off. It's kind of like an ebb and a flow, I don't know. I don't have any rhyme or reason. I just feel inspired at a certain time to share something, and so I do. And whenever someone inquires or I'll just share. And right now it's interesting. My sister, I think you've been aware of. My sister has been diagnosed with cancer,
Yes.
and so I've been able to help her transition to plant-based
Oh.
lifestyle.
Oh.
Not fully, she's not fully committed, but she is working at it, and she's actually having some great benefits from it.
Oh,
And
good.
so those are opportunities that I take in.
That's fascinating.
My
That's awesome.
father-in-law, he's been um, unhealthy for many years since I came into his life, really. So me and my wife's been married 20 years and some months. So
Nice.
he's been unhealthy for that long, and he's kind of been a player in a lot of our transitions at times, and he's done good at whenever he does take some recommendations and or even if it's not directly from us, but it's
Like a doctor.
what we do, and then he would go to the same natural doctor as us,
Yeah.
and so he would tell him the same things, and so then it's kind of like a reinforcement. And he's done really well at times, but here recently, we've had the opportunity to talk to him about abstaining from meat and dairy for his health, and so um, he's tried, and I think at this time, I think he's even to where he's eating very little
Okay.
meat. So I mean, we do have family members that are hearing,
Okay.
whether they agree with our spiritual aspect or our passion and empathy aspect or anything about those. I didn't have that when I transitioned, so
Right. Right.
I can't hold them to a separate standard than I had, you know. So I just believe that, you know, as we walk and we light up the path, you know. I just
Where'd you get this belief from? Is this from a book that you read? Like, how did you come up with this belief? Is like, this is what I'm trying to figure out.
which belief? Which one?
The frequency, like how did you know, like how intrinsically that there's this frequency where we're lower and we're higher, and that to be up here is better. Like, how did you know about the frequency?
Just been research on, like, I researched what do foods have a different, like, okay, another thing I researched was H3O2. Okay, we drink H2O2 out of the faucet or out of a water bottle or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we have a whale coming up out of the ground, it's H2O. Well, I did research on water that is in fruits and vegetables, and it's 3 hydrogens and 2 oxygens, so it's a different composition of water. It's H3O2, and our body, whenever we drink water that's H2O, turns it into H3O2. And so fruit is our best source of water.
Right. I just saw that the other day. Yeah.
So if we consume fruit, we get the best water. Our body doesn't have to use more energy to change the composition. That's something else I researched with fruits and vegetables. I don't know. It's hard to say how I came up with.
It's just like something right? It's like it's.
I just, over time. I mean, I've done this. It's very interesting. Is that early on in my Christian walk, my father-in-law and some of his friends said that I will not need any teacher. I had my pastor at the time wanted to send me to Bible college. He was going to give me a full ride scholarship to Bible college. This is after I'd come out of the university that I previously attended. He wanted to give me a full ride scholarship to Cal Baptist University, send me to seminary, and basically prep me for pastoral, you know, clergy, whatever. He was basically wanting to prep me for his retirement, you know.
Okay.
But I don't know. I just knew in my spirit that's not what I'm supposed to do.
Okay.
And something put in me, I don't know how, why, I can't explain it, but from very early on in my Christian walk, I would just have a sense of direction and no, it's hard to explain it, and I've tried to explain it to many people, but I didn't listen to the pastors all the time. I didn't take his word for it.
Right.
I had concepts that I was challenging, and I wouldn't challenge it with them. I wouldn't verbally, but I would take it home and be like, I gotta really dig deep in this. And so my father-in-law and some of my, you know, spiritual leaders at the time had said, I'm not going to need, you know, any man to tell me or to lead me or guide me. I'm not going to need a, you know, Bible college. They were basically, you know, confirming that what I've already felt, that I'm not going to need to go to Bible college. I'm not going to have to go to seminary because I'm going to be on a path of my own, so I'm going to have, you know, all of these things revealed to me. So I've been on that, and that's how I attribute everything, every little step that I've come along, whether it be You know, Kevin Trudeau giving me some of my substance to chew on and to, you know, or whether it be the other guy, Jordan Rubin, that's his name. That's his name, Jordan Rubin. You know, giving me just a little bit of something to chew on, and you know, those probably two set me on this motion, but I had to be accepting of it, and I had to believe it,
Yeah.
and I had to be ready. And since then, I haven't really had a lot of things. I've had confirmation a lot. Like I read a book called The Land of Meat and Honey, and these things I've already, you know, was had in my spirit, but he confirmed them
Okay.
about Christianity and the Old Testament, the Torah, and all of these things. He's a Hebrew scholar, but I had these things already, and so it was good confirmation. And then there's other things that were, you know, brought to me. There was some YouTube channel that I watched, and when I was watching, like, I tell my wife, I was like, babe, you know, this is exactly the way I'm, you know, where I was thinking, what I was doing is you know, this guy's talking about it, you know, and so it was confirmation. I've had a lot of good confirmations along the way to show me, hey, yeah, you're not a nut. You are walking
On the
the
right
path,
path. Yes.
you know. So I don't know. It's hard to say like how I came up with these things, but I was just inspired to research certain things. I was inspired to research the light energy, the frequency, the vibration of foods, the light energy and frequency of us as humans, as animals, as plants, as, you know. So I can't explain it really. A lot of good confirmations out there that have helped me be reassured and not, you know, this is probably my best explanation of it.
Okay.
You know, as a Christian, I grew up, I didn't believe in reincarnation. I do now. I don't claim to have a full understanding of it. I don't claim to have a full comprehension of anything about it, but I do believe that there are, you know, and I believe that this is just my time of awakening. And, you know, I've progressed in up to this point, and so I don't take any credit for it. I just believe that, you know, the enlightenment of our world and people like you, people like other spiritual leaders, spiritual people who are everywhere on the earth, their frequency, their vibration is increasing the vibration of the earth, of creation. And so the spark goes off for me. As I'm searching and desiring things, you know, there comes a time where I'm all of a sudden I'm enlightened. You know, I become, and it's not necessarily full enlightenment, but it's, you know, progressive. You know, like, okay, I'm now gonna step into this, and it's the progression. And that's probably my best explanation, is that it's just my time, and those who are ahead of me on this earth have prepared that. You know, I believe that we all will do greater things, and we will all, you know, have our opportunities to change our world, and many people have gone before me to do that, and I'm reaping those benefits, reaping these, you know, those rewards. So I could talk about this stuff all day long.
I know, right? That's awesome. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you, because there's a lot of people out there, and there's probably going to be a lot of maybe not so much farmers, but not vegans. I call them pre-vegans now. I've decided not to call them meat eaters. I find that a little bit offensive now. They find it offensive. So I think pre-vegans is a good compromise. They're going to be watching this. And if you could say one thing to these people that are not yet vegan, what would you say to them to help them transition, like to plant that seed?
I've been in every one of those shoes. I've been the hunter. I've been the cowboy. I've been the guy on the slaughterhouse floor. That was everything I knew, everything I grew up knowing. I was fully vested in all of that lifestyle. But have an open mind. Have an open mind to different things that are stuff that we're not accustomed to. One thing that I have always had the capacity for is a desire for love. And even though I didn't exhibit it in every way growing up or in my adult years, the greatest thing is love. And there's the world can be conquered with love. We can end every bit of suffering. We can end all wars. We can end every bit of that with true love. And
absolutely,
that is not just for humankind. That goes to the ground you walk on, to the water that we drink, that we bathe in, that we swim in, to the trees, to the grasses, to every plant life, and to every animal. When we have the ability to love all of creation, we can change the world. I have no doubt whatsoever. Loving my spouse is wonderful. Loving my children is wonderful. Loving my neighbor is wonderful. But our neighbor is also all of creation. And when we can grasp that and really put that into practice, and have chest pain, have tear welled up in our eyes, and we can have our throat constrict because of the love that we can exhibit to other animals, to other life forms, we're definitely onto something. And I believe that's the way I'm going, and that's the way I hope that the world goes. So
yeah, we need the world to go in that direction. Absolutely, I am in 100% agreement with you on that one. Love will change the world. We just have to get other people to believe it.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you, Chuck, for coming on here and spending time with me today to talk about this. I would love for you to come back again and just talk about the spiritual aspect. Right? I think that's I love that component. I'm spiritual myself, but I've never actually heard of the frequency. And I'm thinking about it now, though, so I'm going to start researching that. And I appreciate you sharing that with me.
Well, I'm so grateful. I've never felt myself to be, one to be in a spotlight or whatever. But what inspires me to talk with you is so that others can hear. It's not my message. It's not nothing to put a spotlight on me as a person, but just about our Creator and how we are to operate, and how we can change, how we can transform. It doesn't matter where you've been, where you come from, and there's no story too dark, too bleak to change and to have a impact for all of life. So I really am humbled to have this opportunity to speak to you and to whoever watches this. So
I thank you so much.
I
send you love. I send you love and light. And
yes, love and light to you. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm going to try to get this done as fast as I can for you. I don't know how long that'll be, but
Okay.
I will let you know. And yes, I hope that you have a wonderful week, a wonderful day, and I will talk to you very soon. Okay?
All right. Much love to you. Thank you.
Thank you.